Hey guys, Marcela here, and today I am making a little video in where I tell you a little bit more about my musical and singing journey. Elisabetta was kind enough to ask on Instagram. She was interested in how I started singing and the methods that I've learned. So I thought, hey, that's a nice idea for a video. So here we go. I didn't go to the conservatory. However, I did take music lessons from when I was, I think, 5 years old till maybe like 12 or 13. I went to this academy called Formus in Monterrey, Mexico, which is where I'm from. And there I learned how to play the recorder. We sung. I learned how to read sheet music. And on my 4th year there, I think I took on the concert flute, which I studied for a few years. However, I noticed very recently when I borrowed a concert flute from a friend that knowledge is absolutely gone. So I did take some private violin lessons afterwards when I was, I think, 16 or 17. I had a few guitar lessons at school, and I also had a few lessons with a jazz musician in which we did jazz, harmony, and melodic dictation. And when it comes to singing, I've been singing since I can remember, but I started like really doing stuff with my voice when I was maybe like 17, I think, where I started singing in bands. We started with cover songs, and we did, I don't know, the Cranberries and Alanis Morissette and No Doubt. And I think I had a really good intuition, like I could figure out how to do things most of the time, but I wasn't very consistent. So at some point I realized I think I have to take singing lessons. I had made this idea in my mind that classical singing was probably the most correct way of singing because a few rock singers that I knew sounded very different as they got older, and they couldn't do all of the things that they did when they were younger. And classical singers, they could sing really well till, like a very late age. So in my mind, I was like, oh, well, makes sense, because I want to make use of my voice for a very long time for me to study classical singing. So I started looking for lessons, and I had the honor and privilege to study with the maestro Oscar Martinez. He is a classical singer, a baritone, fantastic singer, and also very nice teacher. And I think I took lessons with him in Monterrey for about, I don't know, maybe like 8 years. And I learned so much from him. And we focused on classical music. We did, mostly like popular arias as repertoire. And I was young back then, so we did mostly, like very light stuff because I'm a lyric soprano. However, in the meantime, I was still working with bands in Mexico, and we would do, like rock. And I started to get into metal a little bit. So that maybe didn't really match that well. However, I am very grateful that I spent all of those years working with Oscar, because that gave my voice a lot of agility. It widened my range a whole lot, and it gave me a lot more confidence when reaching higher notes. And I got more into classical, which was amazing. I learned a lot from it, and I really started to love opera and classical singing. So then I moved to the Netherlands, and I kind of wanted to stay in the same vein, mostly because the click that I had with Oscar was so great. So I started looking for a classical teacher in the Netherlands, and I ended up taking lessons for a couple of years with Harry Ryle in Tilburg. And that was great because I could continue working on my classical voice, and we looked at more repertoire, which was really nice. But then the Metal Factory came along. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Metal Factory, but it's a vocational education in the Netherlands, here in Eindhoven, actually where I live, that is completely focused on metal music. And I had the honor to be invited to teach at this school, so I knew that I had to up my game in a whole lot of different things. Because I did listen to a lot of metal, and I did make metal music, but I wasn't so familiar with all of the techniques used in metal music. So that took me on a journey that started with me looking into the complete vocal technique from Katherine Sellin, because at that time I believe it was one of the only sort of like formal methods that did talk about voice effects. So the book, it talked about distortion, and it talked about grunts, and it talked about rattle and a whole lot of different effects. So I bought the book and I started working with the book myself. And I took a couple of lessons, just a couple actually, with a CVT teacher in the Netherlands. But then I discovered the Estel voice technique, which I immediately loved. Estel is very mechanic and very anatomical and very much about being able to manipulate the individual components of your voice. And I'm a nerd, so that really spoke to me, to my core of my nerdiness. So I took the level 1 and 2 courses of Estel 2 times because I wanted to become a certified course instructor in Estel. And you needed to take both 1 and 2 level courses twice if you wanted to start the whole journey. But when I had taken both courses twice, the instructor of the courses, who turned out to be Alberto Terdust, let everyone know that he was no longer going to teach Estel because he was developing his own singing method. And initially I thought, like, really, do we really need another singing method? Because Estel is great. However, I did think that he was an amazing teacher, so I was very curious. And I took an introduction course of this new method that he developed back then called Universal Voice. And I was blown away because I didn't think that there was going to be anything better than Estel in my whole life. And Universal Voice, in just I think it was like a 2-hour course, it completely blew my mind. Because in contrast with Estel, which is very anatomical, Universal Voice is very practical because it talks about sound characteristics, things that we all can hear. Things like volume, how loud or how soft are you singing? The breathiness in your voice. Is your sound breathy? Do we hear air through it? Or does it sound clear? Is your sound dark or is it bright? It completely blew my mind. So after that introduction course, I think I did also like a 1 or 2 day course in which we worked a little bit more with the Universal Voice principles. And I think I also took a specific workshop for belting and one for rock and metal effects, also with Alberto. And then he announced that he was going to start like a formal, like multiple year study with Universal Voice. So of course I enrolled right away. The entire program is 3 years, but I was allowed to skip the first year because I had already some experience, which was also nerve-wracking, by the way, because I had to be in a class with all like really amazing singers. But yeah, I started with year 2, which was the year that you take to become a Universal Voice master. And the idea of Universal Voice is that you can basically use your voice in all kinds of different ways. I was trained to be more of a classical singer, so all of my singing was more in my head voice and in mode 2. And this was for me the time where I really learned how to belt and how to do all other kinds of things that I never really dug very deeply into before. We had a total of 24 lesson days, and in each lesson day, we really trained like for 8 hours a day. So it was like really drills. So if we were, for instance, handling speech and belt, we would do exercises for most of the day and then maybe do some songs at the end. But it was like vocal boot camp. I had never encountered anything like that before. I made so much progress in that year, and I was so happy every time that I came home after a long day of work, because I could really feel like, yes, like this is really upping my level to a place that I didn't think was possible before. I mean, for my final exam, I sung the Flower Duet with a classmate. I sung Les Oiseaux dans la Charmille, which is very difficult. And Aretha Franklin's I Never Loved a Man, even with some distortion in the high notes. And I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I did really kill it. So it was great. It was brilliant. And after that year, I was so happy and so thrilled with everything that I had learned that I, of course, said like, yes, I want to do year 3 as well. So I ended up doing the whole Universal Voice teacher year 2, which of course was focused on teaching, but I still learned a lot about my own voice during that process. And that was already a few years ago. I haven't taken many lessons since, Maybe a few sporadic lessons because I also had the ambition of becoming a Universal Voice course instructor with the Universal Voice Institute in Amsterdam. However, I had to renounce to the dream because I was very, very busy. But I did end up having a few more lessons with Alberto during that process, which was also really, really great because he's just amazing. And nowadays I have to say that I feel like I am still learning a lot from teaching. I still teach at the Metal Factory. It's been over 10 years. And I notice, sometimes one of my students will be struggling with something and then I realize like, oh yeah, I'm teaching you how to correct this. But this is also something that I do sometimes. So I still take things that I can use for my own singing. And of course, being the Metal Factory and us doing basically every sound available to the human voice, it really keeps me on my toes because I have to be able to demonstrate all of the things that I'm teaching my students. And it can be pretty much everything: speech, belt, classical, high belt, screams, grunts, distortion, rattles. Do they want to yodel? Yes, let's yodel. Do they want to do coloraturas in classical? Yes, let's do it. I really believe in students creating their own path and choosing what they want to learn, because I believe in being able to do a lot of different things. I think that doesn't only allow you to express yourself better when you're writing your own music, but it also widens your chances of having a successful career in the music business. So yeah, I think all in all, I have either been taking lessons or giving lessons for about 28 years maybe. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to all of my teachers for giving me so much, and super proud of all of my students for working so hard. There is something incredibly beautiful about the gift of singing and being able to express your emotions through singing and being able to pass that on to someone and give them that joy. That to me is just incredible. That's it. So now you know my whole story in learning music and singing. If you have any questions or something else that you would like me to talk about, please let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you soon again. Bye.